Hello and welcome to the Judo Way of Life podcast. Today I am joined by Andy Hung. Hello Andy, how are you doing?
Aloha, thanks for having me today. Thanks for the opportunity, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Just like to get started by asking how you got started in judo, where it all began for you.
Yeah, I started judo in Hawaii, specifically Oahu, which is the main island where Honolulu is. And Hawaii has a very unique judo scene. From what I gather, just being, here in America, from what I gather, it's a very unique scene. And what makes it unique is that judo is actually in the high school system in Hawaii. So the same way that you have like a high school baseball team or a high school basketball team, there's high school judo teams. And just so happened that my local high school where I lived on the island was one of the judo powerhouses at that time. And historically, Pro City High School was a judo powerhouse. On top of that, there was a judo club, a local judo club that was run out of the cafeteria at the high school. And I guess kind of just, luckily, geographically, I was in a very close setting for judo greatness. And on top of that, my older brother also did judo too. And from that point, right around like intermediate school, like 7th and 8th grade is when I started kind of seeing my brother do judo. And at that point, he was like, "Hey, you have to come and join this high school team. It's great practice. I think you're going to love it." And at first I was like, you know what? I don't really know if I want to ever compete, but I'll just do practice with you. Because at that point in my life, I just copied my brother. I was like a copycat. Everything my older brother did, I wanted to do. So if he was doing judo, I was like, okay, I'm going to do judo. And that's kind of how I got started, at least doing high school and club judo. And yeah, we never really stopped or looked back since those days in high school. I've just always been doing judo since then.
Is there a reason why Hawaii has a high school judo program and sort of mainland America doesn't?
That's a really good question. I think it's going to be more of a personal answer than I know the exact answer, but I have to imagine that it's probably the strong and large Japanese population that exists in the islands, whether it be from immigration times from sugarcane plantations, and maybe there was judo dojos that popped up then, and the right people kind of understood the value that judo brings to essentially high school students or any age really. But I think just the high volume of Japanese population there. If you're in Hawaii and you're wearing a judo shirt and you go to like the supermarket, people are going to know what judo is. They recognize what judo is, whether it be like their cousin does judo or my uncle did judo back in 1980 something, or my nephew does judo. Like it's a very common practice martial art on the islands. And I'm in Portland, Oregon now, and 10 years ago, I was working at the Cheesecake Factory here at a restaurant, and people thought I did MMA. Didn't even know what judo or jujitsu was. So kind of just showing like how cultural differences, Hawaii, it's very strong. On the U.S. mainland, obviously, certain states are a lot more of a hotbed for judo. But man, in Hawaii, it's probably some of the toughest, early judo competitions that a junior or a cadet, or if not younger, could possibly get, because there's so much volume and there's so many young judoka on the island.
See, that story sort of resonates with me a little bit, because I was in Hawaii in 2019 for a holiday, and I got into a lot of conversations with people at like cafes and at different, like in restaurants and stuff, because I've got cauliflower ears. People were asking, when you're in the UK, a lot of the time people ask and they sort of go, they see your cauliflower ears and they think rugby. But yeah, people were sort of picking judo and jujitsu as the sport when they were asking me why I got them.
Yeah, exactly. Even just people having the knowledge to know what cauliflower ear is on the island. I mean, people just love, MMA is big on the island, jujitsu is big on the island, judo is big on the island. So yeah, guys walking around, they have a nicely groomed, fiery red beard and some cauliflower ear. You're going to attract a lot of attention yourself. So yeah, man, it's just a testament to the population and people knowing what judo and jujitsu is.
So do they have like a competition system between the high schools on the island?
Yeah, they do. And that's something that that's something that I really kind of eventually gravitated towards. Even though I told my brother at the time that I didn't want to compete, all I want to do was practice, I eventually, found my way into the competition scene. And it's no different than kind of like dual meets, like wrestling dual meets. So like it's no different than a judo dual meet. You'll drive to a certain high school, you'll fight 2 high school teams that day. And as the teams move along and as your individual records move along, there's individual championships that are first island wide and then statewide. And there's team championships, the individual championships. And, given the fact that I was in the hotbed of judo at the time for Pro City High School, and I was also practicing at Leeward Judo Club. And Leeward Judo Club is also a historic judo club on the island because it produced multiple Olympic caliber judoka. Kevin Asano is probably the most popular judoka from my island. He's an Olympic silver medalist. He went to my high school. He went to Leeward Judo Club, and I still talk to Sensei Kevin Asano, monthly. So he was kind of like a trailblazer and kind of went through the system that I eventually plugged myself into, and I went through. He even went to San Jose State too for collegiate judo too. So having someone before me, like a Sensei Kevin Asano, that kind of showed what's possible starting at high school judo, starting at club judo, and then making it to the collegiate next level, national level, and then eventually being international. And knowing that he started in this kind of like small high school system as well, it really kind of motivated me. I was fortunate to, win a lot of championships and accolades in high school. And I thought that I was, I was ready and hungry enough to take that next step to go to a national level, which is where I enrolled in San Jose State. And that's kind of where my competition judo career kind of took off, and, traveled elsewhere, did camps, went to other countries to train and fight. And it all started from that, that hotbed of Leeward Judo and Pro City High School.
Considering how much success you went on to have in competitions, why did you have what was the reason behind the initial sort of not wanting to do them?
I think I was still young. I was probably 12 or 13 at the time. So I think I was just intimidated. And I believe partially it was justified, because even at 12 or 13, I'm practicing with high school kids, which is even if they're a freshman, they're probably like 14 or, sophomores, juniors, seniors. Like I'm still in the 7th grade, but because my brother was in high school, I would go train with the high schoolers. So even at a younger age, this is all in hindsight, I was being exposed to judoka that were physically older, that were physically stronger than me, that were mentally stronger than me. And I was always kind of thrown into a bigger pond so I could grow into that pond, if that makes sense. So I never really trained with people kind of around my size, at least at the high school or age. And then I'll go to the judo club and we practice basically 2-a-days. So I would practice at the high school with these older kids. I would probably just get, completely annihilated as a 7th grader. Then I would go to the club judo and basically practice again. So you're talking about a kid doing, 4 hours, 3.5 hours of judo at a very influential developmental age. And by the time I got to high school and I was training with people around my age and training people around my size, I think the years of me putting in that hard work with people older than me and stronger than me kind of paid off. But essentially, I think I kind of just naturally gravitated towards the competitiveness as I matured and got a little bit older. And then as I started to see, some competition success, whether that be at the local judo tournaments that I went to or in the high school judo tournaments I went to, it kind of just fanned that flame and motivated me to see how good I could get at something if I really dedicated myself and my time to my craft. And luckily I was surrounded by senseis and, friends and my brother. I was just surrounded by the right type of people that never let my dream and vision kind of waver. They always kind of push me off to the next step, whether that be winning this next tournament or, leaving Hawaii, leaving my home at 18 and going to San Jose State, which was an Olympic training center, taking that next step. So I think partially it was kind of like I've always been kind of a competitive individual once I kind of found that vein, but I've also been fortunate to be surrounded by a lot of senseis and a lot of other judoka that kind of always pushed me in the direction to maximize my talents.
Yeah, I think it's sometimes underappreciated the effect having the right people around you can have, and how some of that just ends up being pure chance. And if you're just in the right place at the right time with the right group of people, how much of a difference that can make.
Yeah, that's 100%. I mean, you could argue, if there was a pie chart, what percent of the pie is that exactly? Because you see people either change training camps, or they move across the country to get to this specific coach, or they want to go with these specific practitioners. And maybe that comes from kind of being in the United States where, from my perspective, I've been out of the competition game for a long time now, but from my perspective personally, it seems like USA as a nation is kind of fractured between, this training center, you have XYZ training center, they're across the countries, politically they don't get along, and it's not really like united as say like a Germany is, or a Japan is, or a Georgia is. And obviously the results speak for themselves for those countries.
Yeah, well, I come from the UK, and it's all over the place there as well. I think it's sort of getting itself together in some respects with the National Training Centre. But when I was coming through the ranks, there was multiple training centres, and they were all sort of their own little like little gangs, really. They didn't want to play with, they come to the training sessions, the national training camps, but they didn't want to like go to the national centre, and they didn't really mix with each other. And the UK is tiny, so I could imagine in America being so big that something like that would happen.
Oh, it was, it's crazy that you say that, because that was exactly my experience too. And we probably came up during the same time. Like my competition days were probably 2003 to like 2009, like around there, like that 6-year Olympic run. That's where I was kind of going through a lot of tournaments and whatnot. But yeah, I was very fractured during that time, and politics and, these people and that. And it's just kind of, in the end of the day, what it does is it fractures the judo overall, and it's a detriment. And you see other countries that have the political banner completely under one. They have all the training centers, they have all the cadets, everything's all funneling and filing into pushing their country's judo forward. And I'm not here to talk negative about USA Judo. Guaranteed my perspective is outdated at this point, but just from what lived through, experienced earlier in my career, it was very fractured.
Yeah, as an outside observer, it's usually the countries that seem to have more of a do as I say or get lost kind of attitude. So they seem to, I know I'm trying to phrase this properly, but where you sort of have to like sort of fall in line, like a lot of the Eastern Bloc countries, I would imagine, is sort of, well, you come to the National Training Centre or you don't get on the national team. It's up to you. Where places like the UK, America, Australia, they're a little bit more like, do as I say, and then the athletes are like, well, no, I've got rights, type of thing.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100% too, actually. Yeah, for sure.
So you moved to San Jose. Now, I don't know much about the sort of the university system or the college system in America. I know you mentioned then that it was an Olympic training center as well. So what was the judo like there?
The judo there, one of the words I could use to describe it is like prestigious. If you're in America, you're going to know about the lineage that is San Jose State. A lot of Olympians have been produced from San Jose State. By the time I got there, it was 2003. So they were gearing up for the Athens 2004 Olympics. And during my high school time, they had like recruiting camps. And I've been to San Jose State when I was in high school one or two times for camps. And by the time I got there and enrolled as a freshman, it was the middle of their Athens Olympic training cycle. And I always tell people this story because it's a great story, I think, for young judoka to hear. I thought I was I was young, first of all. I was 18. I thought I was, really good. My ego was pretty high. I won a lot of things in Hawaii. And when I got to San Jose State, I got completely annihilated. I got thrown. I got beat down every day. I was crying every practice. And it was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. It was a definite reality check for myself and a reality check for my ego, a reality check for my judo. And it was a very hard transitional judo time in my life because I left Hawaii. I was born and raised there. I'd never been off the island before. It's basically just me and my brother, and we committed to kind of doing this program, this elite training, Olympic training program. And I was getting worked every day. We kind of briefly, we talked about Chuck Jefferson, who at the time was a competitor and our active coach at San Jose State. And Chuck was the most ruthless coach and the most mean coach that and he loved you at the same time, but he would just mop the floor with me. I was a rest round. People would be like, "Hey, Andy, let's go. I'm tired. I need a rest. Let me go with this new freshman guy." And it was a rough transition, but that was the system. And that's what San Jose State was at that time. They were trying to produce national champions. They're trying to produce international competitors. They had a lineage of Olympic champions coming through that program. And that's what me and my brother agreed to. So as far as training, that was a huge next step up for me and my brother, especially myself coming from a competition background. It definitely took a year or two to adjust. But I did end up turning team captain. I earned and worked my way up to being the team captain of the team. Just doing everything, morning lifting, morning running, practices 6 days a week, everything. As the team captain, all those responsibilities fell on me to attend all the classes. And yeah, basically on top of that, you're still trying to, go to regular college classes. That's one of the benefits of San Jose State is that it's an Olympic and national training center, but there's actually education attached to it. So I was enrolled, taking college classes, and it was hard to balance all of that at one time. But long story short, Mr. Uchida, who is, if you mention his name in USA Judo, he's a historic figure. The dojo and the building on campus is named Yoshi Uchida Hall after him. He was very adamant about all judoka having to continue their education. And at the time, 18, 19 years old, I moved from Hawaii to this university to only do judo. Like school wasn't really on my mind. It was obviously I went to classes and did what I had to do, but I was there just to do judo. So to have an individual like Yoshi Uchida who was always pushing you. How's your grades? What classes are you taking? Make sure that you guys are enrolled, get your degree. It took me like 8 to 9 years to graduate college, which is a long time. And luckily I finally got the degree. And, looking back on it now as a 36-year-old man, I'm very fortunate Mr. Uchida not only ran a tough developmental judo program, but he was also a true sensei to a certain extent where he also thought about the athletes after their judo career. Make sure you guys get the degree, utilize the school system so that when your judo career is done, you have a degree to fall back on and advance your career and advance your life.
Yeah, well, that feeds back into what you were saying earlier about having the right people around you to sometimes see the bigger picture where you're unable to at the time.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, even coming from the perspective of, 18, 19-year-old kid versus Mr. Uchida. And I think he literally just turned 102 years old, just April 1st. I think that's his birthday. I think he just turned 102. And I always joke around people that when I met him, when I was 18, I thought he was 102 already. So this guy's been around and he's probably seen so many people and so many young judoka come through that system to have that wisdom, like you said, and we said earlier, just being plugged into a university system that has alumni, that has people that have been at the highest level before, and to have senseis around to make sure that these young judoka are set up when, things are done and your tournament days are done, make sure you got something to fall back on.
Can I ask about the program? So you don't need to name names, obviously, but were the people, say, in your cohort that weren't able to handle the training and the pressures of the educational side as well, and ended up dropping out of the judo program?
Yeah, there was a lot. I mean, there was a lot. There were people that move, no different than I moved from Hawaii, or people would move from all over the country to be there. And, you know, it, I think anyone that maybe be listening right now, maybe that's just gone through that stage of their life, whether they be, 18, 19, 20, you're in a new city, you're in a new environment, is it a new social structure? Not only that, but, I was adjusting physically to the judo and everything. It was very challenging. So, being on the team long enough and having to be the team captain that shows up to everything, I can understand where people that thought they wanted that dream and they wanted the sacrifice, when they really got there and they had to deal with either injuries or the mental pressures or just the physical or the financial pressures, if it wasn't for everybody. And it wasn't for everybody. And I think part of that actually attracted me and my brother to that program, is that it wasn't for everybody. You really had to be willing to sacrifice a lot. And I think any competitive judoka, any judoka that competes at a higher at a level, understands the amount of sacrifice it takes just to fight at maybe a local tournament, let alone a national tournament, let alone an international tournament. There's sacrifices that need to be made. And, being there after a certain amount of years, seeing certain people come through the door and then not being there anymore, it almost started to give me a sense of pride, a sense of confidence that, I'm still here. I'm still here. Not only that, I made team captain. Not only that, is now there's, when you're a sophomore, when you're a junior, when you're a senior, there's still freshmen coming in behind you. So you get to see your growth. You get to see kind of that totem pole. If you commit to it, if you work hard enough, you're eventually going to rise to the next level. Then when you have new people coming in, now you're the one that's, in the position to show them the program or, give them a tough round. And you just kind of adapt to your surroundings. And, while it wasn't for everybody, I think that's what attracted me to the program, is that it wasn't for everybody, but it was for me.
Why was it for you? Like, what was it that sort of kept you motivated? So stuff on to give you my on my judo career, my perspective. So there's times where I wanted to quit. There was times where I was just having a terrible time, just couldn't get results. And for me, it was always going to the Olympics was like the reason behind why I did it. Now I never reached that point, but that was something that kept me when I was in those dark moments where I was like, excuse me, when I was like, excuse me, where I that would keep me going and keep me engaged in the sport.
Yeah, I think everybody has to find what's that motivation for them. Like you said, your dream was the Olympic dream. And that's what kept you. That was the spark that, had that cast light during dark times for you. And when you asked me that question, I think I had two things kind of come to my mind. And, the first one is I had kind of like a challenging situation occur with my family background. When I was a senior in high school, my dad passed away from a heart attack. And my mom and dad kind of had a divorce when I was 13. So I kind of came from the situation that there was a very difficult time in my life personally. And by the time I graduated high school, my dad had just passed away. And my dad's sister, my auntie, essentially said, hey, go straight to college and let's get you off the island. Let's get you focused on judo and let's keep you on this path. And I don't want to say that me and my brother had nothing really to go back home to. But essentially, like we moved to San Jose to do this. Like there was no second school I applied to. There was no going back home to Hawaii because we had to sell our family house. Like there was really nothing left to go back to. And I mean that obviously we had family and whatnot, but it wasn't like that wasn't an option for me. So putting myself on that, not putting my back to the wall, but I mean, I really had nothing else to go to. This was what I was going to do. It was absolute. It was a one track. I'm going to go as far as I can in this journey. I believe in myself that I'm good enough to see how far I could go. I'm in one of the best training facilities in the country. No matter how hard it is, I'm not going to quit. Because I promised my dad that I was going to see how good I could get in this sport, in this martial art. And, something like that to dedicate my journey to my dad when he passed away at 18. Man, it just kind of fueled me it still fuels me today. That promise still fuels me today to be the best business owner I could be, the best martial artist I could be, and the best father I could be. So, I mean, anyone listening out there, like, how to turn negatives to positives, that type of motivation, like you can't put a price tag on that type of motivation. You don't get that motivation through going through comfortable circumstances. You only get that mindset when you have to dig your way out of, dark situations. And for me to apply myself physically, just the physical exertion of doing judo, and the mentality and the competitiveness to do judo, I think at that age of 18, 19, 20, that was something that was very addicting to me. And, it was a positive outlet. I was going to school. I was being physical. I was being social around other people my age and just living the college lifestyle. And that was very positive for me. So I attached myself to it and I attacked it with everything that I had.
Yes, that's awesome. I find it really interesting how something like that could really you could completely unravel, right? You could go down a very sort of dark path, but you can also channel that energy into something far more positive.
Oh man, now that I'm 36 now, I'm looking back on that part of my life. It's so amazing that, again, not to beat a dead horse, but like the people around me. Imagine if I was surrounded by, street thugs or drug dealers or violence, what a person like me could have fell into at 18. But, just losing a parent. I just lost my parent. Who knows what could have happened to me? But my brother kept me straight. My dad's sister kept me straight. I had friends and family keep me straight. And they just put me, they already knew that judo was part of my life. They said, hey, why don't you just go focus on judo and go to school and focus on that right now? And again, just being around people that made that happen, it's a testament to what judo can do to an individual's life, not just technique and not just work hard and not just that, but like, I'm a testament to the judo Bushido spirit of an individual that was on the knife's edge of what my life could have been, having gone what I gone through. And people in judo and the actual ethos of judo kept me on a positive lifestyle to what I'm living today. So it's an incredible journey. And I encourage all judoka to just keep following that life, no matter how far it is on and off the mat. Just keep applying the same mutual benefit and the same things the characteristics you learn and develop on the mat. The true transition is to develop that and keep that off the mat as well.
Well, it feels that's quite a nice segue into talking about your current business and what you're doing off the mat.
Yeah, with Dojo Outfitters, yeah, that's, is that where you're going to go with it? Dojo Outfitters?
That's where I was going to go on this. I was sort of leaving that open to see if there's any other businesses you've also got on the I wasn't aware of. But yeah, the Dojo Outfitters. So how did that start?
Yeah, I started Dojo Outfitters probably 9 years ago now as a brick and mortar store, to get a good visual and feeling of the brand. You could follow us on Dojo Outfitters at Dojo Outfitters on Instagram, but essentially it's a brick and mortar store that caters towards judo and jiu-jitsu practitioners. So we have a large amount of judo gis, judo belts, jiu-jitsu gis. During the lifespan of the 9 years of the store, it also developed into its own brand where we make clothing, new era hats, rash guards, hoodies, shirts. We've done Yeti water bottles. Like, we've done collaborations with other brands in the industry. So it's just kind of like, it's a nice creative outlet that I have as a person being in the industry for more than 20 years. It allows me to, one of the things we have right now in the store is a logo that we have is called assisting to push the culture forward. And what we try to do is we say assisting because I don't view myself or the store or the brand as this is what the culture is, but Dojo Outfitters is assisting to push judo culture forward, whether it be doing podcasts, talking positively about judo, creating judo fanatics content, or creating Perfect the Craft YouTube content. That's where we could get eyeballs on what judo is or jujitsu is. So that brick and mortar store allows us to be a hub where we can meet fellow practitioners. And it kind of like talks about what me and you were talking about earlier, where judo and jiu-jitsu is 1 degree of separation. So you're going to know somebody that I know, 1 degree of separation. And there's a lot of responsibility there. It's super cool that the community is small and everybody knows everybody, but you have to understand there's a lot of responsibility there, because if your name and your characteristic is in question or it's tarnished, your name is going to get around as someone, as an individual that no one wants to collaborate with, no one wants to talk to, you're hard to get along with. You know, your name, you're only as strong as your name will carry in this community and this world. So I take utmost responsibility in that, and I know that's at play. So Dojo Outfitters is a place that, you know, you could come in, we'll get to talking about judo, we'll get to talking about so-and-so, and, you know, we'll kind of have a chance to connect the network of like, oh, you're from, you know, the UK. Oh, I did a podcast. Oh, do you know so-and-so? Do you know this person here? And 9 times out of 10, it's always going to be, oh yeah, that person I went to college with, or that person I did a training camp with. And, you know, being here for 9 years, it's really cool to see that connection, that web that exists, and actually have a place you could drop a pin and say, yeah, I did go to Dojo Outfitters. I did see this location. I met up with Andy, or I met up with Louis, or I met up with these people. And it's been an incredible journey. We've had so many people walk through these doors that I never thought would walk through. Like Iliadis, you know, I had a chance to bring Iliadis into the Pacific Northwest for a tour. I drove from Washington to Oregon with him, and like just to have the opportunity to have a meeting with Iliadis back in 2015, it was incredible. Neil Adams came through the door. You know, Satoshi Ishii, Olympic champion, came through the door. It's just the amount of talent that I've had the opportunity to meet just from having the store has been incredible.
Why did you start the store? Was it something you'd always wanted to do, or was it just sort of an opportunistic creation?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, luckily it took me a long time to graduate college, but I got a business degree. I got a business management degree. And, you know, coming from Hawaii, there's a lot of surf and skate brick and mortar stores. So as a young kid, I would go to surf stores. There's also like a swap meet at the local stadium. There's a football stadium. Essentially, there's a swap meet there. And my dad used to take us there, you know, once a month like that. So I would get used to it and exposed to this kind of like open market, haggling, business, you know, at a local level. And as I got older, I used to really like going to surf shops and skate shops. And once I finally got to the point in my life that my competitive judo career was done, I was transitioning to be a sensei. You know, I always felt that a judo and jujitsu brick and mortar store, who better to do it than myself? And I knew that there would be a market there. You know, this is during like .com. This is all, you know, everything's available on Amazon, everything's available online, but to run a brick and mortar store, it's definitely a different breed of individual. You know, if you don't like to talk to people, don't open a brick and mortar store, because now you're talking to people every day. And I'm fortunate that I love to talk to people. I'm a people person. So I think putting together my local roots and being influenced at a young age through surf and skate stores, on top of seeing, you know, local swap meet, that local hustle, I just felt like having a business degree, I felt like a brick and mortar location would be something that I could really excel at. It would keep me in the judo and jiu-jitsu community. And again, I look at the store and this brand as like a canvas, and it allows me to be creative with our designs of a rash guard or designs of a judo gi. And, you know, it allows me to express myself through apparel. And we're fortunate enough that, you know, whenever we release a rash guard or a judo gi or anything, the market and the community that supports us, they love what we produce. So I'm fortunate that I'm in this position.
Yeah, well, it's something that's inspired me. You know, I've been following you for quite a while, and when I was starting up the judo way of life, I definitely borrowed some inspiration from yours. From the Dojo Outfitters. So I don't think, because I know you're obviously in the jiu-jitsu world as well, but I don't think in judo there's anything that I'm aware of that's of a similar level. We just don't seem to have as much of that side of things in judo. Like, I think there's a lot of brands in jiu-jitsu, like they're along the same lines, but it doesn't seem to be the same in judo. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think you pretty much nailed it. And first of all, I just appreciate the fact that, you know, I'm glad that we inspired you. We never set out to inspire people, but just for you to like see what you're creating with your podcast and your content, and for you to say that we inspired you, I mean, that's huge. That's huge. And I appreciate you, saying that to me. It lets me know that we're doing the right thing, that we're assisting to push the culture forward. So, I mean, for you to keep doing what you're doing, this podcast is great. And the content that you're doing, man, like, you have your own vein, your own vein of thought and your own palette. Like, I just want to say, keep doing what you're doing, first of all. So I appreciate that. The fact that you'll share that with me, but you kind of nailed it too. Like being in this business, this brick and mortar business for as long as we have been, it has given me a very unique view on the spending habits of judoka and jujitsuka and just how different they are. And if you're a jujitsuka listening to this, you probably are familiar with like the brands and the lifestyle and whatnot that's associated with jiu-jitsu. And vice versa. If you're a judoka, then you kind of know what brands and what lifestyles associated with judo. There's not many, but I'm in this position that I have a unique view on both. And the judo market is very underserved. And usually if they are served, it's a kind of a generic afterthought material or design that's kind of like, me and my friends joke about this one shirt that's always like, touch me and your first judo lesson is free. And I'm like, I hate that shirt. I don't know if you ever saw it. I don't know who's making that shirt, but it basically just says like, touch me and your first judo lesson is free. And I'm like, what type of judoka is wearing that shirt? Like, who's buying that shirt? So the market is still being making the choose between apparel that has stuff like that on it. And for me, when I see shirts like that, I want to make a clean judo shirt. I want to make a nice clean judo hat. And I just, I challenge myself to bring a nice clean aesthetic to the judo market. And the fact that when we produce our judoka hats or judo gi that, we pitch sellouts, that's letting me know that I've struck the right vein and I'm on the right path to continue to serve the community. But that's a good question. Why is it that way? It might just be the white and blue judo gi only, for example, right? This is something as simple as that. In jiu-jitsu, you could wear any gi color under the sun. Like the whole palette scope is open for jiu-jitsu. But judo is what? White and blue. So off the bat, you're only limited to two colors, and how many different things can you do with a white and blue judo gi? So something as just basic as that, it is a limitation that judo has, whereas jiu-jitsu is any color under the sun, thread color, anything goes. And that kind of opens up the palette to a lot more other people. So that's a small example on, what the community has access to and what they're willing to buy.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I had this conversation with a guy from the UK that I know called Vince Gilcorn. I'm just actually about to put his podcast out. And we were talking about it in the sense of people's perception of judo versus maybe like jiu-jitsu, where people in the jiu-jitsu world seem more, they probably see more potential maybe in the sport. And it's like, let's set up a club and basically, get as many members as possible, teach jiu-jitsu and make some money. And that seems to be aligned with the fact there's so many jiu-jitsu brands out there as well. It's like, right, let's, add to the lifestyle and the culture. Where in judo, it doesn't, like you said, that t-shirt, I was laughing when you said that, because I've seen that t-shirt and I hate it as well. And it's like, is that the best we can come up with as a judo community? Is that really the best t-shirt design that we can think of? there doesn't seem to be people going, I can make a living out of a lifestyle brand for judo. There's yourself, obviously, as we've discussed, but like, it doesn't seem to be many other people thinking along the same lines. And I find it quite interesting, the fact that, there is that sort of,
Yeah,
I don't know, amateur mindset towards the sport. There aren't people going, you know what, we can really develop something.
Man, to touch on that exactly, the fact that you have that perspective. I mean, if we want to dive super deep into it, just look how judo clubs are normally started, whether they be at a community level in a community center, or at a church, or at a school, being given away. Right? Judo has habitually, at least from my perspective, judo has been given away for a very, very, very long time. And I don't want to say it's to a detriment of the martial art, because at the same time, it changes so many people's lives that to a certain extent, it should be shared overall. But on the other end of the spectrum, and I feel like I'm valid to talk on this because I've also walked the jiu-jitsu the path entirely. I've earned my black belt. I have a stripe on my black belt. Like, I've walked that path completely too. Jiu-jitsu is rarely ever given away at a church, at a school. If you want to learn jiu-jitsu, they put a pay barrier usually behind it, whether it be at an academy or you have to learn from a certain lineage of black belt and so on and so forth. So even just from like a basic beginner level, if you never know anything about judo and jiu-jitsu and you Google it, the chances that you'll find a judo program being given away at a church that you could go to 2 times a week for free, and the chances that you'll find the jiu-jitsu program that charges $175 a month, right off the bat, as a beginner not knowing anything, you're going to kind of get a black and white picture about what is priced, what the techniques are priced at. And certain people will just want to do the free thing at the church, which is totally fine. And some people will want to do the $100, $200 membership at the jiu-jitsu gym, which is fine too. But those choices will also reflect spending habits or buying habits of a shirt or what they like on the design. But like, maybe I'm going too far deep into it, but at the core level, I believe being an individual that has walked both paths, it does reflect on the type of individual that does judo or jiu-jitsu. And I'm pretty confident saying that.
Yeah, I've said before, like, I think one of the best things about judo is sort of how low key and maybe like humble it is. But one of the worst things about judo is how low key and humble it is. And it sort of gets in its own way sometimes. But I also like the fact that it is so down to earth as a sport. Have you ever trained in Japan? Something that popped into my head when you were saying about the different gis and the different sort of outlets for expressing yourself.
I've done a couple of tours in Japan for sure.
Because in Japan, they have a very distinct culture and lifestyle, and all the different companies have their logos, and the judoka wear the different designs on the side of the gi on the sleeve, right? And a lot of the time it's sort of based on like the anime kind of design. So I mean, they sort of express themselves in a way, and that doesn't seem to have sort of transitioned to anywhere else in the world. But I think there's definitely ways of being able to open up and be a bit more creative, even with just the blue and white gis.
Yeah, like you said, a lot of corporations will have like their logos on the chest, or they'll have different, patchwork and whatnot like that. So you're right in that aspect. Actually, you're right. Also, if you watch, obviously you watch IGF tournaments, you'll see a lot more like sponsorship patches on the shoulder epaulets area, and like, yeah. So to a certain extent, you're right. They actually, for the canvas that they are given, they do maximize the space on that canvas for sure.
So in terms of the Dojo Outfitters, where do you see the brand going, or your business developing to? Are you just going to keep it, say, as a brick and mortar? Are you going to try and sort of franchise it out without giving away too many of your secrets?
No. That's a good question. I think I'm at the point in my life where I like to have, I like to manifest things in my life. And I think for a while I was kind of like very timid. And I didn't want to let people know. But at this point in my life, you know, if someone tries to open up another Dojo Outfitters, more power to them. You know, they could try it, they could do it. They'll do it their own way. You know, like nothing's really like, it's no different than Judo and Jiu-Jitsu. Nothing's really a secret. You know, nothing's really, there's no secret techniques to everything. But I think where I see this brand going, you know, when I started Dojo Outfitters, one of the biggest things I wanted to do was have multiple locations. And we're coming up on, I think, 9 years of our Portland store being kind of like the flagship store, being the only store in the country. I probably wouldn't go as far as like franchising it, because I feel like that takes away the heart and the soul about whether it be, you know, my hands on it. Now you're just licensing it for kind of a cash type of exchange, which I'll never leave off the table. But as far as right now, where my vision is like, I don't really see it being a sort of a franchise thing. It would have to be like my involvement. I would have to go and set it up. I would want to have control over it. But essentially, to kind of answer your question, I see it kind of going. I'm going to continue working to push the brand forward, I guess, in an online sense as well. It's something that I'm continuing to try and increase our efficiency, our exposure, our eyeballs. We've had a lot of success with our Perfect the Craft video series, which is all on YouTube. Essentially, it's me, my brother, and we're fortunate to have other, you know, judo senseis or jiu-jitsu professionals pass through our doors. It's a little like 6 to 9 minute technical clip, breaking down techniques that are our favorite, or, you know, things not to do, things to do. We have a lot of success with that, and we're actually bringing that series back this year. So something like that adds exposure, you know, through YouTube, gets more eyeballs on the brand, gets people clicking on our website, and kind of just grows us in a different environment other than just brick and mortar. So as far as brick and mortar sales, I'm eyeing for a second location. As far as expanding eyeballs, continuing to do, you know, Instagram reels and creating and continuing our Perfect the Craft series on YouTube. That's kind of like where I could kind of control and influence with my time and everything right now.
And I'd like to just talk to you quickly about because you mentioned about you're a black belt in Jiu-Jitsu as well. We haven't really touched much on that. But how do you see the two disciplines? Do you see them working together, or do you see them as two separate entities that, you know, you go to one, you go to the other, but they don't really sort of work together?
Man, to me, honestly, just to kind of, I'll answer the question, but I'll kind of go the long way, where I feel like if I talk to a lot of pure judoka, they only do judo, and they have a certain perspective on what jiu-jitsu is. And that's their perspective, not really doing jiu-jitsu. They only see and kind of, you know, what they're exposed to. I'll talk to pure jiu-jitsuka who don't do judo, and they have a perspective on only what judo is, but never really done it. And they're both kind of looking at each other, kind of, I don't want to say judging each other in a negative sense, but they have preconceived notions on what each other do without ever actually doing it themselves. And again, I'm an individual that have done both. I've competed in judo at the highest levels. I competed at jiu-jitsu at the highest levels. I have black belts in both. So for me, when I see and talk to jiu-jitsu purists or judo purists, you know, they're only seeing one perspective of what we're looking at entirely, which is, I believe, combative grappling techniques that were developed to, you know, self-defense or negate a threat on your being. And it's a martial art. To me, it's a martial art. And answering your question, I believe they're very synergistic. They work better together. If you're a jiu-jitsuka, join your local judo dojo and put a white belt on and just learn judo for judo. Don't try and go to a judo club and say, hey, teach me just certain amounts of judo just so I could put it into my jiu-jitsu. That's going to lead to short-term success, and you're not going to maximize your knowledge in judo. If you're a judoka, find the jiu-jitsu academy and take classes there. And as an individual, you're going to find where the techniques will synergize with each other, whether it be through taking a fall and taking ukemi from a jiu-jitsuka standpoint, how to take a fall and recover so you're not just getting the air blasted out of you. If you're a judoka, working on your newaza ground game or getting, you know, watching some of these IGF techniques nowadays, like there's a lot of jiu-jitsu chokes and arm bars and fluid fluid attacks being chained together that from a jujitsuka, I'm like, oh, this technique is being borrowed from quote unquote a jujitsu. So I think it comes down to the person, the individual. Don't be limited by just one mindset. Don't just be limited by, I'm just going to do judo only forever and it's the most superior art ever. While that could be true, don't believe everything you think. Try to go to a Jiu-Jitsu academy. Have an open mind. Not only will it make your brain more pliable, but you're also going to see techniques that you've never seen before on a judo mat, and you're going to find ways to implement that, and vice versa too. If you're a Jiu-Jitsu-ka, challenge yourself to do judo. Get confident standing up. Take your falls. Learn some throws. Not only that, but allow the ethos of what judo is to infiltrate your life, and vice versa as well. And to answer your question, I feel like they're very synergistic, and they work best, and they're maximized when combined together, legitimately. Not just teach me what jiu-jitsu could do for judo and what can judo do for jiu-jitsu. You have to take the long path, and you have to submerge yourself in all aspects of both arts to get the maximum capacity of synergy.
Yeah, I think I share your opinion there with the. When I started doing the jiu-jitsu, it was more a case of it was just as a way of supplementing my judo training as a competitor. But as I've sort of moved away from competition judo, I'm trying to learn it more as an individual sport, instead of trying to be like, right, well, how can I use this to make my judo better? It's like, right, well, let's learn this as a sport in its own right. My issue is I go through phases where I just want to do throwing. I just like throwing people, and I go through phases where I just gravitate more towards judo. All right, Andy, let me wrap it up there. Really appreciate you taking time out of your day to come and speak to us. Really enjoy that conversation, and like I said before, your brand has been something that's has inspired me and helped me, and you've done exactly what you set out to do, and assisting sort of like pushing the culture forward. I think the work you're doing is great, and I hope you're inspiring other people as well. I'm sure you are.
Hey, I appreciate that, and right back at you. I know you have your Judo Fanatics content that you just produced yourself. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I did a few videos last year, and I think you've got about 5 or 6, haven't you?
Yeah, we have some too. But the Judo Fanatics that you produce and the content that you're producing with your podcast and your social media, keep going, because the culture needs that. The culture needs people like you, and I appreciate the opportunity that you saw me as an individual worth talking to for your content and your podcast. So thank you very much for reaching out to me, and for anyone listening on there, just keep moving that culture forward. Keep going to practice, and you represent yourself and you represent your martial arts as you guys move forward. So thank you again very much, David, for this opportunity, and I appreciate you.
Yeah, well, I'll link all the different places people can find you in the information. But if you want to just go through quickly where which corners of the internet and where your brick and mortar store is and where people can find you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the mouthpiece of the store is essentially our Instagram at Dojo Outfitters. You could follow us on YouTube at Dojo Outfitters. The brick and mortar store is located in Portland, Oregon, USA. If you're ever passing through Portland, Oregon, hit us up on Instagram. That's where we have the most direct contact at Dojo Outfitters. You could follow me personally at Andy Newaza. I'm on Instagram too. And you could find our content on Judo Fanatics as well. And we love to connect with our fans and our audience. That's what we got into this business for. And as far as I'm the one that's always going to be, as far as I'm involved in this brand, that's what it's always going to be about, is connecting with people. So I appreciate you guys again. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you.